Small business loans have dropped by 20% since the financial crisis, while lending to large firms has increased by. Last year alone, the SBA backed more than 70,000 loans to small businesses, supporting $29 billion in lending and nearly 700,000 jobs. The SBA also helped small businesses win more than $90 billion in federal contracts and provided counseling to more than 1 million entrepreneurs. But of course, there's more work to be done, and that's why you're here, Mrs. McMahon. So I know that you share those goals and values for what we need to support small business in this economy, and I look forward to hearing your statement today and your response to questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I'll warn you that Senator Shaheen referred to the new members of this committee. They may be new members to this committee, but these people have been around a while, so I don't think you're going to get softball questions from them. So with that, I would ask you to stand and be sworn. If you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Now I understand you might have some introductions of your own.
Yes, I certainly do. I'm very proud to introduce this morning my daughter Stephanie and her husband Paul Levesque. And I have, yes, please stand up.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome.
And I have wonderful friends who have traveled from around the country to be here today, so I'm very appreciative of their presence as well, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, at this time, the floor is yours for an opening statement.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored to have your consideration to serve as the head of the U.S. Small Business Administration. I'd like to thank Senators Blumenthal and Murphy for their kind introductions, and it was nice to be on a really even playing field today. I'd also like to express my gratitude to President Trump for this opportunity to join his administration and his confidence in me. As an entrepreneur myself, I have shared the experiences of our nation's small business owners. We are more than our products and services. We are people. We are families. The small businesses that are the engine of our national economy are driven in part by people working to put food on the table, pay for kids' braces and swimming lessons, save for college, and prepare for their own retirement. Whether it's an organic farmer or an app developer, with 1 employee or 100, we can never forget that small businesses are people with goals and values that cannot be calculated just on a profit and loss statement. If I have the honor of being confirmed as the head of the SBA, I will do my best to advocate on their behalf. My husband and I built our business from scratch. We started out sharing a desk. Over decades of hard work and strategic growth, we built it into a publicly traded global enterprise with more than 800 employees. I am proud of our success. I know every bit of the hard work that it took to create that success. I remember the early days when every month I had to decide whether I should continue to lease a typewriter or if I could finally afford to buy it. Yes, believe it or not, that $12 a month at that time made a difference in our budget. Like all small business owners, I know what it's like to take a risk on an idea, manage cash flow, navigate regulations and tax laws, and create jobs. Since stepping down as CEO of WWE in 2009, I have worked to help more people have the opportunity to pursue those goals. In my travels throughout Connecticut in 2010, 2012, when I was campaigning, I met with more than 500 small business owners, touring their shops, restaurants, offices, factories, and sharing ideas during roundtable discussions. Job growth was a pillar of my campaign, and because small businesses are responsible for half of all private sector jobs and the majority of new jobs, they were my focus. And for the past 2 years, I promoted women in entrepreneurship as co-founder and CEO of a startup called Women's Leadership Live. I wanted to share my vast experience with others who are launching startups or looking to scale their businesses. Through live events and webinars, we educate entrepreneurs about things like applying for a loan and developing a business plan. we also work to build their confidence. I always say that even entrepreneurs with the best ideas sometimes need a little wind beneath their wings. Women's Leadership Live hopes that by sharing our stories of success and failure, our networks of contacts and resources, and our strategies for addressing challenges, we can give small business owners the confidence that will help propel them forward. Small business owners do not just need confidence in themselves. In order to take a risk, they need confidence in the economy. Should I have the honor of being confirmed to lead the SBA, I will work to revitalize a spirit of entrepreneurship in America. Small businesses want to feel they can take a risk on an expansion or a new hire without fearing onerous new regulations or unexpected taxes, fees, and fines that will make such growth unaffordable. We want to renew optimism in our economy. Small businesses have had some tough blows in the past decade. I know what it's like to take a hit, and I've learned it's not how you fall, but it's how you get up that truly matters. Early in my career, when we were very young, my husband and I declared bankruptcy. We invested in a company we didn't understand and trusted people we shouldn't have. When that company went under, we were left holding the bag. We worked really hard to pay off those debts until we realized we just couldn't. Bankruptcy was a really hard decision and a very tough time in our lives. We lost our home. My car was repossessed in our driveway. We had a young son and a baby on the way. We had no choice but to work hard and start building again so we could support our family. When our daughter Stephanie was born, a perfect little baby so full of promise and potential, I took it as an omen that things were going to be okay. We owed it to her and to our son that we would make it okay, and fortunately, we did. As I visited small businesses all over the country through Women's Leadership Live, I have seen that same resiliency over and over again. Entrepreneurs are fighters. They work hard, and when they get knocked down by a recession or a natural disaster or simply a change in consumer demand, they turn to their creativity to make it better. But sometimes they need a helping hand. If I'm honored to be confirmed, I will work to guide SBA as that helping hand in the most efficient and effective way possible. I believe in leadership by example. As a CEO, I never expected employees to do anything I was not willing to do myself. I believe in setting expectations and holding people accountable, but trusting them to do the job for which they were hired. If confirmed, I look forward to working with the SBA staff. I'm eager to learn from their experience and their expertise. I will listen, and their ideas, concerns, and recommendations will be taken seriously. I know there will be new challenges in a government setting, but I will commit myself with the same responsibility to deliver value to the taxpayers of America as I did to shareholders of my company. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the pleasure of meeting with many members of the committee, and I appreciate the kind words of encouragement I have received. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. The way we're going to do this is we're going to use the what they call the early bird method, or first come, first served method of people. We're going to go back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. I'll go first, but I'm going to reserve my time to interject as I see appropriate as we go down the pike. And with that, I will yield the floor to my friend, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your statement, Mrs. McMahon. I know we discussed this issue when you came to visit me, but I think it's important to give you an opportunity to address it in the committee because you have been quoted as saying that you supported merging the SBA into the Department of Commerce. That proposal has been a major concern for businesses in my home state who believe their voice in Washington is already not loud enough. And so I wonder if you could clarify your position and whether you believe SBA should continue as a standalone agency or whether you think it should be merged into another agency.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Sheen, for the question and the opportunity to clarify. When I was running for the Senate in Connecticut, I was a strong advocate for reducing duplicative programs. And as part of my campaign, I talked about the list every year that the GAO puts out of duplicative programs. During that time, President Obama had indicated that he was looking to merging some of the agencies. When I was asked if I supported merging SBA into Commerce, I really wasn't focused on SBA or Commerce. I was focused on the concept of merging agencies or reducing duplicative programs so that we could reduce those costs. I am a firm believer that SBA needs to be a standalone agency. I'm very proud that President Trump has kept it as a cabinet post, and I intend to serve my full term and execute as well as I can to advocate on behalf of small businesses.
Well, thank you very much for clarifying that. In New Hampshire, SBA has made significant progress over the past 4 years, and we've seen growth in both lending and government contracting. And to some extent, this has been because of the work of so many of SBA's resource partners, so the Small Business Development Centers, the Women's Business Center, SCORE, Volunteer Mentors, Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and district offices. And I think these partners are really critical to the mission of SBA in helping small businesses. So as administrator, how would you identify opportunities to maximize SBA's resource partners and provide adequate funding for their staffing and programs?
Well, first of all, I look forward to going to our different districts and our different regions and meeting with those SBA members, the leaders and the managers in those offices to hear about what programs are working, what programs are not. I don't have a working knowledge today of how successful those programs have been, except to note that from you have seen that success and many of the other members that I've talked to. So I would want to continue to encourage our outreach. My former company, WWE, we were always concerned about veterans and the returning veterans and how to have jobs. And WWE is part of Hire a Veterans program, so that veteran aspect of helping them create jobs. As I've already stated, I've been very forthcoming and wanting women entrepreneurship to grow and continue to support that. It's very near and dear to my heart. So I will continue that outreach with all of our different organizations and continue to mentor through the women's centers as well.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that, and I know the resource partners in New Hampshire and across the country will be very pleased to hear that as well. As we discussed in our meeting, one of the most important ways SBA can help small business is by making sure they have access to federal contracting. And Senator Murphy mentioned in his introduction that we saw for the first time last year that SBA, or that women small business owners had reached 5% in terms of access to federal contracts. So it's a milestone, but a very slow start to what we need to do more of. And so I wonder if you could talk about how you plan to work with federal agencies to increase small business opportunities for federal contracts.
I would first like to fully understand, what those projects are and how we can best fit, the businesses to those contracts. I think that in terms of the prime contracts and the subcontracts, we need to make sure that we've got that adequate representation for that growth. And so I would want to make sure that our businesses have the right outreach, the right advocates in those markets. And that's what I would focus on, is trying to make sure we have those right advocates.
Thank you. My time is up, but I just wanted to make a point, Mr. Chairman, of announcing that I'm going to enter a question into the record on behalf of Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez, who is the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee, and it relates to the ongoing situation in Puerto Rico. It's something, again, that you and I discussed when we met Mrs. McMahon. So I will be submitting that for the record.
Thank you very much. Senator Paul.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
I think the chairman put it very well when he said that small businesses are worried about regulation. The cost of regulation is a big deal to small businesses, particularly when you just imagine, if you have 1,000 banks or you have one bank, your compliance cost is much greater, obviously, if you have one bank than if you can spread it through 1,000 banks or 10,000 employees. This goes on across America. In addition, we have another problem. We actually have big businesses that come to Washington and actually are in favor of regulation because they see it as an impediment to smaller competition. So I think small business does need a voice, and I hope you'll be a good voice for small business. And I guess what I'd like to ask is, in your opinion, do you think we're over-regulated, under-regulated? Do you think regulations are a problem? Do you have any ideas about how the Small Business Administration might be run to help with the regulatory burden?
Thank you very much, Senator, for your question. What I heard constantly when I was campaigning through the state of Connecticut from small businesses was the over-regulation environment was just costing them time, effort, and money that they couldn't focus on their business. I think we forget sometimes that in small businesses, especially mom-and-pop companies that are starting up, and I have a special place in my heart for them, that, they're the chief cook and bottle washer. They're the CEO, the CFO, they're the janitor, they're every other thing. So when they get a packet of regulation forms that they have to fill out in order to comply with regulations, it's A, they don't know what to do with it, B, they can't afford to hire lawyers to get them through the regulatory environment. So either they become more at fault and not in compliance, or they've taken time away from their business to do it. And so it is really difficult, for small businesses to have to suffer under, I think, that kind of burden of the regulatory environment.
One of the other burdens or costs of small business is taxes, and I probably wouldn't discount it from regulations. I'd probably say it's about equal. A lot of small businesses pass through their income LLCs as individual income, so a moderately successful small business might be paying 39.6, income tax. But then in addition, you got an Obamacare tax, so you're like 43, 44 before you, God forbid, live in the Northeast and have a 12% state income tax on top of that. So I think there is a great burden. You won't get to necessarily address tax policy directly unless there are ways you can as a small business administration, but you also will be a voice in the cabinet. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on, I guess, in general, the same question. Are we overtaxed, undertaxed? Is our tax structure currently an impediment to the formation of small business?
Well, thank you. And having first started out as a sub-S corp, and then Women's Leadership Live that I started as an LLC, so I fully understand how the pass-through aspect of that income works. And I do think that if we are involved in tax reform, we do need to consider how to also make it a level playing field for those pass-through companies. So that would be a strong advocate for that.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Cardin.
Mrs. McMahon, first of all, thank you very much for being willing to serve in this public position. And we also thank your family, because this will be a family sacrifice. If you think you've traveled before, this is a big country. So, but we thank you for your willingness to serve. You've already heard the numbers. I could go over the 500,000 small businesses in Maryland, over 1 million jobs. But I focus a little bit on the individual companies that I have visited, where I see a small business is developing a way to deal with diagnosing student athletes on head injuries, or I see new drugs being developed along the I-270 corridor, and they're going to help quality of life. Or I see a business that's a small business developing a better way to help other businesses deal with their administrative costs. I see in our national defense, so many of these small companies are figuring out better weapon systems or ways that we can test our weapon systems for efficiency. All that's the creativity of small business. They all had one thing in common. They all used the services of the Small Business Administration. They used it for mentoring and developing a business plan, because at times it's difficult to know exactly what a bank needs in order to be able to get a loan. They used the services of SBA for capital, because that's very challenging for small businesses to get, particularly venture capital, to be able to take those risks. They used the Small Business Administration as an advocate to make sure that they got fair government procurement. And particularly in this region, government procurement is a very important part of opportunities for small business. So as you and I talked in the office, and I thank you very much for our personal visit, we needed an advocate as the Small Business Administrator in that dealing with other agencies. We talked about the procurement issues. We talked about from the 5% for the women. There's also set aside for small businesses. We have minority businesses, veteran-owned businesses. One thing's in common. When an agency, a big agency, is doing their procurement, they at times like as few contractors as possible because they have to evaluate every contract that's there. And they tend to bundle into large contracts that make it virtually impossible for small businesses to be a prime contractor. We've attempted to pass anti-bundling legislation so that that is not done. Can you just share with me how you intend to advocate on behalf of small businesses, particularly among the other government agencies, to make sure that procurement is fair to help small businesses grow?
Thank you very much for mentioning that again, because we did have a good conversation about that. I found that the best way to obfuscate what it is you're really trying to do is to bundle things or just stack stuff on top of it. So I'd really like to peel back some of that bundling and take a look at it so that we have the opportunity for our small businesses to really have that fair shot. They shouldn't just continue to get squeezed out. And I would want to be their advocate. I would want to hear from them. I'd want to find out, well, how did this happen? How can we get around this? Whom do we need to speak to? How can I advocate more strongly on your behalf? What avenues have you gone down, or what other avenues do you need to go down so that we can reach in and make this more about you? And I would be working very hard to advocate for our small businesses.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate your response in regards to what you've done for veterans, returning warriors. To me, that's an extremely important part of our commitment to help veterans and returning warriors in regards to small business. I shared with you the initiative that was developed by the private sector in my state, the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, instituted a Veteran Institute for Procurement. It was a national effort to bring in returning warriors to help mentor them into starting small businesses in leadership. And as a result, over 700 veteran-owned businesses have been helped by this program in Maryland. It received help from the Small Business Administration to make this a national program. And I just urge you to look at these types of programs because they really do help the entrepreneur spirit for our returning warriors, and we must do whatever we can to help them in coming back to our country.
Thank you very much. Just one quick comment is that I serve on the board of a company called American Corporate Partners, and it is a mentoring company for returning veterans to help make them the transition between the military and the private sector. And so the outreach is to companies and corporations that then mentor these men and women who are returning and guide them and often have them come into that company and spend days with different members of the executive or whatever branch that they want to be in, and it's been very successful.
Thank you. The last point I would make is that in regards to access to capital, it's particularly difficult for minority businesses. And I hope that we can work together to find ways that we can do more outreach to help access to capital for particularly minority businesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and we'll go to Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Linda, I figured if Chairman Risch can call you Linda, I can too, and I will. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate your taking the time that you did. If you spent as much time with everyone as you did with me, you've been pretty busy. You're taking this very seriously.
Yes.
And I particularly enjoyed our visit because I've been there. You know, we have very similar backgrounds. You were a lot bigger than I was. I didn't get up to the numbers that you did, 800 employees. But I can remember spending 20 years getting beat up by the bureaucracy, so I understand a little bit about it. And I think that the office that you have has the opportunity to do so much more than it's done in the past. We have a guy named Tom Buchanan, who's the head of the Oklahoma Farm Bureau. And when I talked to him about the problems that the farmers are having, not just in my state of Oklahoma, which is a farm state, but throughout America, he said it's nothing that is in the agricultural bill. It is the overregulation of the EPA. Now, those are his words and my words, too. And so we watched this happen. He said of all the problems that we had, of all the overregulations, the one that we scared us the most was WOTUS, the water bill. And as you know, there are a lot of people, a lot of liberals would prefer to take that jurisdiction away from the states and give it to the federal government. And there was quite an effort there. Now, I bring that up, and that as an example, because you have, as you and I discussed, in your department that you're going to be responsible for, the Office of Advocacy.
Yes.
Now, the Office of Advocacy is where it's an independent office, and its purpose is to advocate on behalf of small businesses to other agencies and weigh in on their rulemaking. And during the last administration, the office has been pretty much ignored. And you're going to have to start from a zero base. And if you given a lot of thought to how you're going to have this Office of Advocacy, they're available for people who it was designed for originally.
Thank you very much. Well, if I have the privilege of being confirmed, I would really like to strengthen that office because I've always been a defender of the little guy. And we need someone who's going to go to bat for our small businesses. And I'm just the girl to do that.
And why do you think it wasn't done before? Why do you think it was not done during the last administration? We had many, I have 300,000 small businesses in my state of Oklahoma. I didn't hear from all of them, but almost all of them on the problem. So how are you going to revive that?
I think I have to first find out why it did not work. I've heard that comment from more than one, that the Office of Advocacy really needs to be strengthened and to be able to have some teeth when it goes to the other agencies to say, you're not complying, and why aren't you complying? And as of right now, those teeth aren't there.
Yeah.
And I need to find out why, and I don't know why, but I will get back to you, and I look forward to working with you on that.
That's good, and I would assume that the number of people who are working, there are a lot of people who have not been as responsible and responsive to small businesses, and you'll have a chance to determine who they are, and if necessary, make changes. I would assume that would be an accurate statement. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. They have within there the Small Business Innovation Research Program that provides funding for the small business to develop and commercialize new innovative technologies. And companies receiving the SBIR funding stand a much better chance of bringing their ideas to market than those not receiving the funding. In recent years, many rural states, including Oklahoma, have underperformed in this funding. Can you tell me what the SBA changes they can make to improve this?
Well, again, thank you. It's a little bit difficult to say exactly what you're going to do when you don't really understand what has been done here to date. I do understand SBIR has been so helpful with the research and development aspect in providing that kind of research for startups. And I would like to understand what those startups need, how we can continue with SBIR.
Have you been able to get the benefits of the SBIR and what they're doing in your company, or do you know people personally who have?
I do not.
I see. Okay. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Heitkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for attending our committee hearing last week on the Subcommittee on Regulatory Affairs and Federal Management. It was all about small business and all about the small business advocacy role that SBA should be playing, that we were disappointed that may not have been as aggressive as what they should have been in the last several years, and I look forward to continuing to work with Senator Inhofe on a legislative solution to a lot of our problems.
I noticed when I left that subcommittee, no one's hair was on fire. So
Mr. Chairman, it was a great discussion, and we welcome you at any point, Linda, to our subcommittee. I think it's a great place for a gathering of talking about the cross-section between small business interests and regulatory reform. I wish just for a minute that you'd been able to turn around when you were speaking about the challenges you had and had seen the pride and affection in your daughter's face. It was quite lovely. It's clear you have a great relationship, and as my mother's heart just got a little warmed by that affection. And I think it's what so many small businesses are about. They're about families, and they're about working together and learning how to overcome struggles. But I want to talk about two groups of entrepreneurs that I think are looking for a different level of engagement and involvement. We've talked a lot about programs, and the first is young entrepreneurs, and the second are Native entrepreneurs. And thank you so much for coming to my office. We had a great discussion. But I'm concerned that young entrepreneurs frequently may be able to write the best app or write the best program. They somehow don't know how to translate that into business. I personally believe that we are experiencing a complete failure in financial literacy in America. That is finding its way into the business community. And I'm interested in your thoughts, and I'm going to just throw in the Native piece, and then you can have the rest of my time. Native Americans have experienced a lot of economic challenges, really from the initial engagement in this country. The challenges that SBA has in Indian country are exacerbated by the challenges we have with jurisdiction and the challenges that we have with making sure that there's a commercial code that people can rely on. And so I think I'm interested in how you can work with both these groups of entrepreneurs to engage a future for small business in America, especially in Indian country, but among young entrepreneurs.
Obviously, I have more experience with young entrepreneurs than I do in Indian country, and I would look forward to working with you and understanding more of the situations that are in your state relative to how small business administration can be beneficial to our Indian small business developers. So, and I look forward to that, so thank you. Young entrepreneurs, I've found, are great with ideas. Some of them have a great business savvy. Some of them have no clue what to do. They're in their garage, or they're in their dorm room, or wherever it is they are. They've developed this unbelievable app. They've got all kinds of stuff and all. Suddenly, boy, if somebody's going to buy me and I'm going to be a millionaire. But it doesn't always work that way. And I think there's a discipline that needs to be shown more to our young entrepreneurs. I sit on the board of trustees of Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. And one of the things we do is incubate small business development there. And as we strive to sort of walk these young entrepreneurs through the steps of business, but they're actually creating businesses. They've developed T-shirts and hats with logos, understanding intellectual property, and all of that and how that is managed. So that whole educational process is like, wow, this is how it works. But they are making success of it, and they're running successful businesses. And we need to continue that, not just in our universities. But I have kids, in high school, they don't know how to balance a checkbook. And it's like, really, we need to have that fundamental understanding, I think, of basics of economics, as we move forward to develop this next generation of our young business people.
I don't think there's any dispute here that we need to grow the financial literacy in order for people to be successful. I saw it when I was tax commissioner. People with great ideas, great ability, didn't know how to file even the simplest of tax forms. And so, not that we shouldn't have fewer tax forms, but there is going to be a need for some tax forms to be filed. And so I look forward to continuing our discussion, especially about the challenges of Native Americans in entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Heitkamp. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mrs. McMahon, for being here today. And I appreciate the time you took to sit down with me and many other members of this committee. And I want to say a special thank you as well to Senators Blumenthal and Murphy for being here today, because I think so many times we get caught up in partisanship that we forget that there are many issues that we are very, very passionate about that share a bipartisan nature. So I want to thank them as well for being here to support you today. And I know that many members of this committee love to work on things together, especially when it comes to regulatory reform, tax reform, and others. So I want to thank them for that. Now, we sat down in my office, we talked about a number of issues, and one of the issues that I brought up as we sat down was project that I've been working on over the last year, and it's legislation that gives small businesses a stronger voice in the regulatory process, and it's called the Prove It Act. And the legislation did pass out of this committee last year, and we worked really hard with the folks at SBA in the Obama administration to get their input and feedback, because the goal is to make sure that the bill is bipartisan and that it is a success. So we did talk about it, and the purpose of the Prove It Act is to strengthen the voice of small business owners and provide incentives to agencies to improve the quality of their certifications and analysis when they're actually writing a rule. And simply put, the Prove It Act says if there is a battle of analysis between different agencies on the economic impacts of a rule, then there should be a third party that will step in, review the facts, and then issue an objective assessment. And as you know, the Small Business Office of Advocacy testified in front of this committee last year because they were in disagreement about the analysis that EPA and the Corps of Engineers, had completed on the WOTUS rule, and believed that the rule would have significant economic impact on small business. And as well, with this Prove It Act, there were a number of organizations that supported it. The NFIB, the Chamber, and the Women Impacting Public Policy, all of those organizations supported it. And can I get a commitment from you to work with me on this legislation and help implement it, especially given the desire by our president to make sure that we are reducing regulatory reform, especially on small businesses?
Senator Ernst, thank you very much, and I did enjoy our meeting. And when you talked to me about this legislation, I thought, wow, isn't that just a really common sense thing? And I think we just need more common sense in government. If you've got two sides that can't agree, you have a referee, you have a third party that comes in. And I liked also what you were telling me about the bill, which is that it actually would make the agencies work together before it had to become like a public event, and help with drafting the legislation. So I think that it's a very good piece of legislation that I would like to learn more about, and would look forward to working with you to make sure that we can support our small businesses.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And then on a related topic too, what are your goals just in the first few months, should you be confirmed? What are your goals in the first few months at the SBA?
There are so many things to look at, and obviously we want to be mentors to our entrepreneurs. We want to grow and create jobs. But if I had to walk in the first day and someone were to say to me, what is the first thing you really want to look at today? I would say I want to take a look at our disaster relief program. Mm-hmm. Because disasters don't pick a time. They happen. And we need to be prepared for those disasters. I don't know how effective they've been. I know that when Sandy hit a few years ago, Hurricane Sandy, the devastation up the East Coast and in my state of Connecticut and New Jersey, I'm sure Senator Booker can speak to that, there was a delay in time of response from SBA. I don't know if that's because it was a massive storm, it went so far, resources weren't there, but we need to get ready for that. 2 nights ago, tornadoes in Georgia that killed 19 people. Mm-hmm. So we have to be ready for disaster relief. When our small businesses are put out of business for a while, the economy suffers because they're out of business. We need to get those funds to them if they're out of their homes, to make those direct loans to them in their homes so they can get back and functioning and be families. So that is a real passion that I think we really need to take a strong look at.
That's really great. Iowa is not immune to those natural disasters. And in Iowa, 97% of our jobs come from small businesses. So thank you very much, Mrs. McMahon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Senator.
Senator Ernst. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. McMahon, thank you so much for spending so much time with me yesterday. And I especially appreciated your candor and willingness to address my concerns that have to do with WWE's use of 1099 employees, especially as it pertains to the health of your performers, as well as the potential as someone who's going to head the SBA and promoting small businesses, that I don't want that to become the standard that small businesses use 1099 employees to avoid paying and providing the health benefits and the protections for small business employees, just like anyone else. And also, I appreciate you addressing my concerns about potential monopolistic practices at WWE as well. So thank you for that time. I do want to focus on one of the goals of the SBA. Congress created the SBA to achieve two goals, to help American small businesses and to make sure these firms win a fair amount of government contracts. I want to focus on that second goal. As a member of Congress committed to making government work better, I'm concerned that our federal procurement system is not meeting the needs of American small businesses. And in Illinois, 98% of our businesses are small businesses, and they employ 46% of the people living in Illinois. So they're a significant portion of our economy. I often hear from Illinois small businesses who are frustrated by jargon-filled, clunky, and complex federal websites, things like FedBizOps and SAM.gov, and they are very confusing online tools. And these tools may be fine for large corporations who have teams of accountants and lawyers to weed through them and figure out what they mean. But you and I talked a little bit about how, as CEO at the very beginning, you also, chief cook and bottle washer and janitor of the enterprise. But, I think these federal tools are failing small businesses who want to do business with the government but just don't know where to start. Simply put, the federal government is falling short in tapping the full potential of the millions of American small businesses who are ready to help agencies achieve their mission with the innovative products and services that they can provide. So if confirmed, will you commit to working with me to streamline and modernize these vital online federal contracting tools?
Thank you very much, Senator. Well, as someone who herself is technologically challenged, I can certainly understand the frustration of many small business owners who are trying to break through the morass of looking at confusing websites. I think it is very important that we make our tools simplest and most direct way they can be so that they're easy to use. If you just make things too complicated, there are many who give up before they can even try to get through, and they don't have the resources to have it explained. So I would look forward to working with you if I'm confirmed so that we could sort through this and say, okay, let's bring someone else in. Let's hear from these people. What is it they really need so that when those websites get developed and refined, they actually do become a very useful tool.
Thank you. And once companies have used those tools to try to get some of these contracts with the government, will you commit also to working with me to improve the small business prime contracting and subcontracting goals for each agency? We spoke a little bit yesterday about this, that small businesses have a hard time competing for some of these goals. Veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. I spoke a little bit about the frustrations at VA, for example, of major bureaucracy. I'm hoping that you will focus on working with me to improve those goals across federal government and to also hold agencies accountable for providing minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned small businesses with a real fair portion of the federal contracts.
I'm very happy that we've gotten to 5%. I'd like to see that go up. So yes, I would look very forward, should I be honored to be confirmed, to working with you and all the members of the committee. And I've been invited to several of your states to come and visit with the SBA offices, and I really look forward to that. As a matter of fact, I would be very happy to sign right up to visit many of the states that are here. Thank you.
I won't make you come to Chicago in the winter. It'll be fine. And just finally, I want to address the prospect of the president's potential $1 trillion infrastructure program, which he spoke about on the campaign trail as a candidate, and I seem to be recommitting himself to a significant, much-needed investment in our infrastructure across this country. Again, this goes back to making sure that small businesses have a shot at those contracts, because small businesses are operating in our hometowns all across the country. They're not just clustered in large cities, and they can really bring jobs and development to the local area. So I hope that you'll commit to working with me to make sure that special attention is paid to providing small businesses with a fair opportunity to compete for work, particularly disadvantaged small businesses enterprise when it comes to that infrastructure program.
Yeah, I would look very forward to doing that, and I faced some of those same issues when I ran for the Senate in Connecticut. The small business often talked about they they were shuttled over, and they didn't get their fair share. So I would look very forward to doing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. McMahon, I most certainly appreciated the time that you spent with me in my office as well. And a lot of our discussion had to do with the size of the federal government with regard to the amount of regulatory overreach that I personally feel has been involved, not just over the previous administration, but over a series of administrations. As you may have heard, that since 2008, though, more than 25,000 new regulations have been issued for American businesses under the Obama administration. Some estimates find that the economic impact of these new regulations have reached nearly $727 billion and require 460 million new hours of paperwork. That's on top of compliance costs of nearly $2 trillion for all federal regulations, or more than 11% of our GDP. The SBA's Independent Office of Advocacy is, I believe, a truly important voice in standing up for small businesses against these regulations and the burdens that they would impose on small businesses. The Office of Advocacy, it intervenes in the regulatory process when possible, and it really helps to inform other regulators about the impacts on small businesses. And some of the other members here have already indicated their concern with the capabilities of this particular Office of Advocacy. I'd like to go specifically to what happened in the last year, where the Office of Advocacy stepped in on behalf of many small businesses in the United States. In fact, many family farms and ranches that would have been impacted by the EPA's Waters of the U.S., the WOTUS rule that Senator Inhofe and Senator Ernst have both identified earlier. As you may recall from our meeting in the office, the Small Business Administration's Office of Advocacy sent a letter, which I would like to, Mr. Chairman, submit for the record today. They sent this letter on October 1st, 2014 to the EPA's administrator, Gina McCarthy, and Major General John Peabody of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, criticizing the WOTUS rule and its impact on small business. And in fact, they actually recommended that the entire rule be withdrawn. Now, that was apparently ignored. The rule continued forward. I'd like to know that if you are confirmed as the administrator of the SBA, would you be willing to write a similar letter recommending that this rule be withdrawn once again and reminding our new administrator of the EPA of the damage that it has done to small businesses, farmers, and ranchers alike?
Thank you very much, Senator, for that question. I would look very forward to working with you and the other senators that Senator Ernst and others who have brought up especially the issue of WOTUS. In fact, I think it was Senator Ernst when I met with her who told me that if a small business in her state wanted to expand, it would have to get approval from the federal government in order to do that. I clearly think that's overreach, and I'd look forward to working with you and other members of the committee to make sure that we have the right regulations in place and not overburdensome ones.
I'll just, to put it a little bit more directly, would you consider, if necessary, if WOTUS is not withdrawn, would you consider reissuing that letter once again through the office, similar to the way that it was done last time, but this time addressing it to the new director or the new administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under the new administration?
I'd like to find the most effective way to put teeth in that Office of Advocacy, and if that's one of the ways to do that, I would like to work with you to see if we could make that happen.
So I can take that as an almost yes?
I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
All right. Let me move on. Mrs. McMahon, under the Obama administration, fees were waived for a number of qualifying 7A loans, including the upfront one-time loan guarantee fees and ongoing servicing fees for 7A loans of $150,000 or less for fiscal years 2014, 2015, and 2016. If you are confirmed as the administrator, would you consider looking at the continuation of these waivers?
I would like to make sure that we are making it as easy as possible to get these loans and to help our small businesses. And I would like to take a really strong look at What did we accomplish by that? How long was it in effect? Did we get really feedback from small businesses that this was beneficial? And so when I have those answers, I certainly would want to see what the merits of that are.
Very good. Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Rounds. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you. Thank you for the time that we spent together. I, first of all, want to commend you for the comments that you made regarding President Trump's comments about women. And I ask you to be a strong voice for women. And should you be the confirmed administrator, will you commit to preserving the programs and funding that exist to promote women and minority entrepreneurship and work with this committee to improve these programs?
I definitely want to be a strong advocate for women, for our small businesses, and yes, for our minorities in business, our veterans. I want to work with the committee and with members of Congress to make sure that we have the right regulations to help our businesses grow.
I think that you have a understanding of the special challenges that are faced by women entrepreneurs, having been one yourself, and minority-owned businesses, veterans, and so those are groups that I particularly am also focused on to make sure that they have the kind of support from SBA that they should get. We've heard a lot about access to capital. That's something that you mentioned hearing about when you were running for office. And have you identified the specific factors that lead to difficulty in accessing capital? Because unless you know what the causes are, we can't make the appropriate changes. So since access to capital has been mentioned by you a number of times, have you ID'd those causes and what you would do about them as SBA administrator?
Thank you for your question. Let me share a story with you. When I was running for the Senate in Connecticut, there was a company that was in the rural area up in the northeastern corner of Connecticut. We call it the quiet country. And it was an entrepreneur who made grips that look kind of like springs. And they're made by hand. And in his company, he had probably 8 to 10. They were mostly women who were making these particular grips and springs. And he had built his business from 2 or 3 people and added people. He had gotten loans from his community bank before, bridge loans, when it was time for him to expand a bit or he was a little bit cash shy. He knew his community banker. And now he had work orders and more business coming in. He wanted to hire new workers, but in order to do that, he needed to add on to his facility. And so he went to see his same community banker. And the banker told him, he said, well, the problem is you're asset rich, but you're cash poor. And he said, well, I totally get that, because if I had the cash, I wouldn't need to be here to get through this time. Mm-hmm. And what his banker told him was, in the past, I've been able to loan you this money. But today, under the new regulatory environment that we find ourselves in, you no longer qualify as you did before. And you would have to over-collateralize this loan in order for me now to make the loan to you. That meant that he had to put up all of his assets, his house, and other assets in order to collateralize a much smaller loan. And while entrepreneurs are very happy to take managed risks, that was just simply too much. So he did not expand and he didn't grow his business. He didn't hire those next people. And that's an example of a regulatory environment, I think, that does not allow our small businesses to grow.
Let me note that I've heard those comments also from small businesses in my state, and I visit with a lot of them. But some of those resulted from the financial collapse and the under-regulation of the financial services industry on Wall Street. So there's usually a cause and effect, and I'm with you in trying to resolve some of those issues for our small businesses. But there was a reason that the collateral rules changed. It's because there were all these uncollateralized loans, which led to the economic collapse. I want to make the point that we hear a lot about overregulation. When I talk with my small businesses and they say that, it's easy enough to say we're in an overregulated environment, but I always ask them, what specific regulation is it that is causing you trouble? Because unless we identify them appropriately, we can sit here and talk about overregulation and not really get to the heart of it. I'll give you an example. There was an orchid farmer, if I recollect correctly, and he could ship his cut flowers, but for some reason, various reasons, he couldn't ship the whole flowers. And these were all clean flowers, all of that. And so we worked with, I think it was USDA, to change that. And so I'd like to ask you whether, when we actually move to improve the regulatory environment, that you would ask those very specific kinds of questions so that we get to the heart of whatever the regulation is that is causing them problems, as opposed to some kind of a, oh yeah, we're overregulated. That doesn't take us very far, in my opinion.
Thank you for that comment, too. And I don't know how you change regulations if you can't identify them.
Good.
Just exactly what you said. We have to know their negative and positive impact so that we can change them or enhance them. And I am committed to doing that, for sure.
Thank you. And I know that my time is up, but I'm really glad that you mentioned one of the first things you would do is look at disaster relief, because SBA being on the ground when disaster strikes, and all of our states have experienced that, that is really important. I was pleasantly surprised by your response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your willingness to serve. According to the 2016 NFIB survey of problems and priorities of small business owners they listed things like cost of health insurance, unreasonable regulations, federal taxes, tax complexity, economic uncertainty, and locating qualified employees as some of their top concerns. As a business owner, I know that you can identify with many of these concerns, and if you're confirmed, how will your experience play a role when determining if the SBA can alleviate some of the concerns of small business owners?
Thank you very much, Senator. Having walked in the shoes of small business owners, I understand how difficult it is when you are in a cash flow business and not a bricks and mortar business. It's very difficult to have access to capital and get loans when you really have no collateral against that except your own cash flow. So I know that there are a lot of startups that face those kinds of issues in getting capital. So I know how to talk to them a little bit about that. I know how to talk about their cash management, and this is what you need to do. And I advise all startup companies, once you start making a little profit and you can put it away, get a line of credit, because when you need it, you can't get it. And I think it's really important advice to small companies, but to manage your cash very, very carefully, because cash flow is really a great part of the success. And undercapitalization is one of the reasons that a lot of small companies fail. So having walked in those shoes, I absolutely understand that.
Absolutely. One of the things that you mentioned, the cash flow, and certainly looking for qualified local employees, I assume that you've had.
Hello everyone, Jen here, Golden State Times. I just wanted to go in real quick and give you guys some breaking news. It says that Senate Democrats want to propose $1 trillion infrastructure plan. And it says that Senate Democrats on Tuesday will propose spending $1 trillion on transportation and other infrastructure projects over 10 years in an attempt to engage President Donald Trump on an issue where they hope to find common ground. Now, I don't think this has to do anything with common ground, because $1 trillion is a hell of a lot of money. And wanting to spend it all at once it's just very dumb. I think what they want to do is they want to inflate how much we owe already and make it over $20 trillion, because right now it's at $19,966 billion. So what the Democrats want to do is they want to put it over 20 trillion and screw them over that way. So it's developing. We'll let you guys know of any more developments coming forward. Thank you.
To jobs with those folks looking for those jobs in that marketplace.
Thank you. And maybe a little bit different twist on that as well. As I continued to say when I was campaigning. However, that was like a 4-year period when I really did learn a lot about what was going on in my state. And what I found out was that in many instances, there weren't as much a shortage of jobs as there were trained people for those jobs. And I think we have to refocus how we are looking at the jobs market. Sitting on the Board of Trustees at Sacred Heart, I took a look at some of the educational programs that we have and asked, are we reaching out to our corporations and our companies that are surrounding our university to understand what kind of shifts or changes do we need to make in order to fulfill that employment stream? And I think we're starting to be a little bit more successful in that, but we have a long ways to go. But that's one of the things that I've sort of really committed to just even before this, I was asked to do this. But I'd like to continue to make sure we are training our folks for the jobs that are there.
I have about 30 seconds left, Mr. Chairman. I just close with a comment. I hope that as our new head of the SBA, that you will look for ways to create synergy within government, perhaps our technical schools on the local level. It doesn't matter what level of government, that you'll look for ways to create that synergy that will provide really an alignment of those jobs and skills in the marketplace where those jobs are available. I think that's a great place for SBA perhaps to take a unique perspective on their mission and find ways to improve the outcome of the average person who starts in a very difficult place and finds entrepreneurship as a path forward. It would be wonderful for us to see that happen under your leadership.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Chamber of Commerce back home will be delighted with your line of questioning.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
that.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Resch, Ranking Member Shaheen. Welcome, Mrs. McMahon. I thought we had a very constructive, informative meeting last week, and I really appreciate the chance to sort of share stories of entrepreneurship and job growth, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to continue that conversation. It was mostly about the key role the SBA can play in helping small businesses grow great jobs, and the importance of accessibility of capital, strength of IP, the value of mentoring programs like SCORE, the value of other areas of federal government like the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which can help small businesses to grow. My own home state of Delaware, which I've invited you to visit, not to be outdone by Senator Scott. We also have a great beach community, which we hope you'll come visit. There are a number of iconic businesses at the Delaware beaches, Grotto's Pizza and Dogfish Head, that started with SBA loans that helped them grow in their early stages, I should say. And so I think you'll see on both sides of the aisle here a knowledge of and enthusiasm for the real impact that SBA has had in our home states, and the folks who lead SBA in Delaware have done a terrific job and worked very well with my office. And I love doing small town visits where we'll go up and down the main street and see whether it's 7A or 504 or SCORE, the impact that SBA programs can have. When we met, we talked about your knowledge of and experience with intellectual property, using trademarks and licensing to protect some of the key innovations that your business engaged in. And I talked about my passion for patents and for making sure that small businesses know how to protect what they've got and what they can bring to the market. Do you agree it's important to educate small businesses about how they can protect what they invent or innovate, whether it's through patents or trademarks or other IP? And is that something you think we could work on together?
It is something that was such a large part of WWE. Mm-hmm. And from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure at WWE, when I was there and I started the program, sometimes you bring a little bit of knowledge and you can be dangerous, or you have enough knowledge to know you have to go further and ask somebody with expertise. And it was very important that as the company developed intellectual property, that we protected it, that we copyrighted the television shows or our music programs or our magazine works. It was very important that we registered trademarks, in their particular classifications to protect. You've invested so much money to grow and develop that product or that intellectual property, but if you don't protect it, and then someone else takes it away from you, you don't have a leg to stand on because you didn't defend your own property. Right. So it's really important to make sure that young businesses understand the value of what they create and that they need to protect that. And you have to expend some money to do it, but in the long run, you're protecting your investment.
I look forward to working with you on that. As the lead Democratic appropriator on the subcommittee that funds the SBA, we also talked about how this is an area of general broad agreement on a bipartisan basis in what is often an otherwise contentious subcommittee. And I think the fact that you were introduced positively by two gentlemen you ran against recently was a really a moment of agreement about the skills and the value that you bring that's worth remarking on. In appropriations, it's my hope that we'll also work together on the 7A program to make sure we're finding the right balance between promoting needed loan programs while avoiding a return to subsidy. Let me just mention two other things before my time runs out. I've had the joy of working with Senators Enzi and Roberts on extending the R&D tax credit in a way that can help innovative startups, companies that use technology and innovation in order to grow quickly. And I'd be grateful for any help you could offer in our working together to inform more small businesses that are technology-centered about that opportunity. And then last, Senator Risch and I worked together in the last Congress to advocate for the SCORE program, something that was launched in Delaware by DuPont retirees.
Yes, I remember we talked about that.
A mentoring program that helps small businesses that really need to get their first business plan together or that need someone with relevant sectoral specific skills. So I'd be interested in hearing whether you could see your way towards supporting SCORE and seeing this as a critical program for your time as SBA administrator if you confirm.
Thank you very much. You know, statistics show, whether it's women-owned businesses or whatever business there is, you are more successful with mentors because it's someone that you can talk to who can give you advice, and especially under SCORE, when we've had these executives who've come in and taken it upon themselves. And these are very seasoned and accomplished professionals. And to be able to have that as a resource, I think is fantastic, and I would really like to see more and more mentoring because we will have more businesses be successful.
Well, it is a strikingly low-cost and high-impact federal program. I'd love to work with you on that in more detail in the future. Thank you for a chance to be with you again today, and I'm grateful that you've stepped up and are willing to take on this important role in the Trump administration. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Young.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member. It's so good to be with you, Mrs. McMahon, to have someone of your caliber and experience.
Thank you.
Willing to put yourself forward and serve in this capacity. One of the advantages to being lower on the proverbial totem pole here is I get to hear all the brilliant questions of my colleagues. One of the disadvantages is I have to rework my questions when those brilliant questions were ones I intended to ask. But so I'll attempt to ask you some things that haven't yet been addressed. But by way of background, I come from a small business family as well. My dad has grown a commercial HVAC distributorship over the years, and now my brother's taken over that business. And I understand the unique challenges, unique opportunities that are associated with small businesses. This town tends to be rigged oftentimes against the little guy or woman, as it were, on account of regulatory burdens, sometimes foisted with great deliberation by larger businesses to crowd out competition from upstarts. Our tax code is another example. The Small Business Administration, and it has been mentioned many times here, I think has an opportunity, perhaps unrealized to its full extent, to advocate on behalf of small businesses in each of the different federal agencies across the federal government through the Office of Advocacy. And you've already indicated that's going to be a real point of emphasis on your part. The Regulatory Flexibility Act of 1980 tasks this Office of Advocacy with monitoring federal agency compliance with the Act and assisting regulatory agencies during all stages of rulemaking development to mitigate the potential adverse impact of rules on small entities, blah, blah, blah. So that seems like a lot of work. This is, comparatively speaking, a small department when you compare it to, say, the Department of Defense and whatnot. So I would be very interested, say, 180 days into your service, to get feedback to this committee, to my office in particular, about what you've learned with respect to the Office of Advocacy, how its operations might be improved, if there are additional authorities or resources required to advocate on behalf of our nation's small businesses and young firms. That would be instructive, I think, to all of us. Do I have your commitment to provide that report should you become our next head of the department?
I look very forward to reporting back to all of the members of committee the things that I've found, I think, throughout SBA, where I have found issues or problems that I need your help and guidance. And I hope that you would not hesitate to reach out to me to say, look, these are some things I really want you to take a look at, because I'm going to be drinking from a fire hose for a while, continuing to, and it's going to be a lot for me to absorb, and I'd like to be the most effective at it that I can.
So will you make every effort
Yes, I will.
within 180 days to provide a report with respect to the Office of Advocacy and the things I mentioned?
I'll get back to you as soon as I can with that, and
All right.
within that time.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second question just pertains to basic government efficiency and effectiveness and avoiding duplication, something you indicated earlier is important to you. Can I get a commitment from you that you'll work with me to find efficiencies and ways to streamline the work of the SBA?
I definitely want to streamline. Where we need to streamline and where we need to add, we need to add. And yes, I look forward to working with you and everyone on the committee to do that.
And lastly, I know back in my great state of Indiana, we've stumbled upon some unique approaches to assisting our small businesses, some which might be replicated by other states. No doubt other states have their own examples to put forward. So I think there might be an opportunity for the Small Business Administration to be an effective clearinghouse for best practices emerging from the local level or state level, perhaps even best practices that we've seen in other countries. With your commitment to work with me on that effort, perhaps we'll be able to assist our small businesses. Can I get your commitment to explore those opportunities as well?
Yes, I'm a firm believer in best practices. And I think as we look across all of what is going on relative to SBA, we'll identify some areas that need to be shorn up and others that need to be changed, or some that need to be removed. So yes, I like best practices.
Right. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Young. And we will go to Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Mr. McMahon, we talked to my office. I raised this issue of net neutrality with you. And the reason I did was that it's not really well understood that 68% of all venture capital goes to software and internet startups. And they're small businesses just beginning. And one of your counterparts over at the Federal Communications Commission, the new chairman designate, is talking about repealing those rules, which really does make it possible for new startups to be able to reach all 320 million people in America, which is the business model. Then the venture capital, other investment money flows that way. And again, we have that next generation of startups. Are you familiar with that net neutrality issue, and what is your kind of general philosophy towards those areas of economic development in the small business area in our country?
Thank you very much, Senator. I think yesterday when you and I spoke about it, I said, thank you for informing me of this and educating me more about this. I have not dealt with net neutrality in any of the the businesses that I've been involved in. I understand your concern from yesterday that we don't want any restrictions on access to the internet because it can impede small businesses. So I'd like to continue to learn more about that and to learn more from you about that and how it can be used most effectively.
And I thank you. SBIR, some staggering numbers from Massachusetts since the program was created in 1982. Massachusetts small companies have received 20,000 small business grants, and 2,300 new firms were created out of those grants, creating tens of thousands of new jobs in our state. And we very much rely upon SBIR grants as part of our long-term business planning. Senator Shaheen and I and others, we've been advocating to make this a permanent program. Have you had a chance to look at SBIR, and what would you think about the prospects of your support for making it a permanent program?
I've just begun to familiarize myself with it, and I have talked with many of the senators who are on the committee who have said how important SBIR has been to their constituents, especially in the world, as you and I talked about yesterday, in small businesses, of technology and startups and what a large proportion they are now of small businesses, especially in your state. So I want to delve more into that and to see how we can best utilize SBIR to make sure if we need to enhance it, let's do that. If we need to make it permanent, I want to know why that's beneficial, so I'd like to continue to learn from you and Ranking Member Shaheen and others about that.
Okay, thank you. And climate change. Climate change is real. It's happening. We see it along the coastlines, especially of our country. And over again, FEMA and the SBA have had to respond in order to give help to Louisiana affected by historic flooding, or along the Northeast with historic storms that hit our coastlines. And in each instance, FEMA and the SBA have responded to these natural disasters. Climate change is only going to get worse. Have you looked at that issue of what that impact is and what planning SBA might have to make in order to deal with these changing conditions, especially its impact on small businesses?
I learned from you yesterday about the warming of the waters, Massachusetts up to Maine and around through the Cape Cod area.
The fastest warming body of water in the world.
And I found that a fascinating statistic. And you indicated to me how it's driving the cod north, lobsters north, and so the fishery industry there is really being impacted by that climate change. Those are very real statistics that I want to learn more about and to know not only as it relates to Massachusetts, but where else in our country where small business, I think, can be affected, and we should take a more active role.
And I'll just say in conclusion that after the Sineev brothers attacked Boston on Memorial Day in 2013, the SBA stepped up to help all the small businesses in that area so that they could recover. And I think that's just another great function of the SBA that's not fully understood, whether it be natural disaster or man-made. The SBA has been there, and hopefully under your leadership, we can see a continuation of that great tradition. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McMahon, I want to thank you for being here. It means a lot to serve your country and to step forward and be willing to make the kind of sacrifices you're going to have to make in this position. So I'm grateful for your patriotism. I want to also just say when your daughter and son-in-law stood up, just want to say for the record that your daughter is far more fierce and intimidating than your son-in-law.
That's sexist.
Yes, well, he and I are about the same age, almost exactly the same age, and Paul's letting himself slip a little bit. So after this, maybe we should go to the Senate gym so I can give Triple H some triple help in getting back in shape.
Well, Stephanie might could give you a mean hip toss.
I believe that. Real quick, New Jersey's had some good years. In fiscal year 2015, we received about $750 million in SBA loans, with over $500 million of that going to underserved communities. As mayor of Newark, New Jersey, I was blown away by how minority women in particular are doing such an extraordinary job in our country of starting businesses. I'm proud to support a lot of the programs that are focused on them, and I'm wondering if you believe or support a higher cap for the SBA to be able to make additional loans in fiscal year 2017 and 2018.
Well, what I would first like to see is, are all of our loans being made effectively? Are the loans that we're making going where we think they're going and have the results that we want to see? I don't have a handle yet on whether or not that metrics is in place for that accountability. I want to make sure we are serving more and more minorities, small business owners, our veterans, our Native Americans. But I need to know, first of all, are the loans we are making effective?
Right.
And if they are, then let's increase it.
I really appreciate that response. And the stimulative effect of these loans is in many ways far more powerful than other usage of government dollars. The traditional indices that banks use to evaluate the loans, something I learned from Kiva, which I'm sure you're aware of, that's doing incredible microloan work, by using other indices that are untraditional, they have loan repayment rates that beat traditional loans, and something that I think the SBA should be looking at to try to figure out other ways to get capital into the system. Something else that your predecessor did that I think is great, trying to correct for really bad policy coming out of the 1990s, was that a lot of folks who were in prison for nonviolent drug use, many of them for doing the things that 2 of our last 3 presidents admitted to doing, would come out of prison and have paid their debt to society, but wouldn't be able to get Pell Grants, wouldn't be able to get food stamps, wouldn't be able to get public housing, stripped in many ways of their ability to compete economically. What your predecessor did was make changes to help formerly incarcerated citizens, many of whom are on probation parole, be available to get loans from the SBA. It was a remarkable change, and some of our great entrepreneurs are people who've made mistakes in the past. I just want your commitment that that's something that you're going to look to continue as a practice.
Well, I certainly would like to know more about it, and it sounds like something that's been effective, and I'd like to be able to see if it has been.
I appreciate you looking into that. Again, most Americans, 1 out of 10, is violating drug laws, and unfortunately those drug laws are enforced disproportionately on poor people and minorities at rates that are astonishing. If you're African American in this country, no difference between blacks and whites for using drugs or dealing drugs, but you're arrested almost 4 times more likely, which means 4 times more likely to be stripped of opportunities to compete economically. And your attention to that, continuing that program, is something that's would be really helpful. There's been a lot of talk about the SBA and transparency. I just want to make sure that you're committed to helping us to have transparency when it comes to loans, so we can have better metrics about how your loans are doing and being directed towards different populations that have been mentioned here. I really appreciate that. Really quickly, I have a lot of problems with the regulations as well. It's something I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to work on both sides of the aisle. Take, for example, the fact that the #1 employer in America, if you include contractors with federal government, is the federal government. It creates tremendous jobs. But as we've heard from others, navigating that Byzantine labyrinth of complicated rules and regulations is difficult. Take, for example, just the people who manage our pension funds, which has been given to one major, hundreds of billions of dollars in pension fund management given to one major outlet, while emerging managers, which states use to manage their pension funds, often women-run businesses, often minority businesses, actually outperform the big folks. But because of the way these regulations are, it's very hard for those smaller businesses to compete. In the technology field, this is really difficult because small tech firms, which often provide greater service, can't even compete for government grants because the way it's promulgated is just too difficult to navigate. And so I just want your commitment that as you look at small businesses in general, looking here inward at the way we do our processes is really critical to empowering small businesses. And if we can help to lower these regulations, make space for smaller businesses to compete for larger contracts or to break down those large contracts into smaller bite-sized opportunities, we will help to fuel our economy in a significant way. It's something as a member of the cabinet with all these other cabinet members who push billions of dollars out into the private market, for you to be a voice for someone who says, let's look at a way to empower small businesses, can make a majorly impactful difference and actually get government better service for their dollars. Is that something that you will be focused on?
I absolutely want to advocate for our small businesses and having that access to compete.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Booker. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McMahon, I enjoyed our visit in my office. I appreciate your time. I think you'll be a great addition to Mr. Trump's team. I've just got a couple of questions. Do you understand how hard it is to start or expand a small business in America today?
Yes, sir. I have had that experience. I know very well what it takes.
I mean, Senator Booker talked about this, but let's just start with the regulation. I mean, here's what small business people tell me every day. They don't complain about specific rules or paying their fair share. This is what they tell me. They tell me we need simpler rules. We need fewer rules. We need quicker decisions by the bureaucracy. We need government workers who will answer the phone. We need government websites that a normal person can navigate. That's all they're asking for. Now, it's been my experience, and I've been in America longer than I've been in Washington. I've been a senator for 3 weeks. You can't be for jobs if you're against business. And businesswomen and businessmen need 5 things. They need low taxes. They need reasonable regulation. They need capital. They need decent infrastructure, and they need a skilled workforce. Now, I realize SBA can't provide all of those, but tell me how at SBA you're going to help small business women and small business men get those things.
Well, for one thing, and thank you very much, Senator Kennedy, and I too enjoyed our visit. I think a lot of what you've talked about, if I were fortunate enough to be confirmed.
You will be.
I would like, thank you. Did you hear that? Okay. I think it's really important that we do mentor these small businesses. They, a lot of times, someone has a wonderful idea. This is my business. This is what I want to do. I'm going to come in, I'm going to show you. And they come in with sort of an abstract business plan. And even if you help them sort of get that business plan right and get all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, sometimes you have to look at them and say, this is not a good idea. This business really doesn't look as though it has the legs to succeed. Mm-hmm. And I think often there isn't enough of that kind of mentoring. But I think that, all of the other things that you've identified is like a blueprint for success. Lower taxes, fewer regulations and all of that. But sometimes you don't have the basic understanding of what it's going to take to have a successful business. And there needs to be that aspect of mentoring as well. And I think that will help us grow more quality businesses that do have the opportunity to succeed.
Well, lots of small businesses fail. I understand that. But what I think is happening in our country is that a lot of really smart people are just afraid to try. They're afraid of their chances of success. They just think there are none. They just start looking at the different permits and regulations and rules, and on top of that, you got to have the capital, and many people have to put a second mortgage on their home, and there's it's just insurmountable. And here's what I hope you'll do, Ms. McMahon, because I do believe you'll be confirmed. I think you're very qualified for this position.
Thank you.
And I think the President has chosen well. But I'm familiar with what SBA does, and I know you are too, but I hope you'll go beyond just SBA. I hope you'll be the advocate for small business in this administration. Because in my state, 90% of our jobs are created by small business women and small business men who are taking a risk. And it is risky. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they fail. But when they stop trying, at least in my part of America, we're in real trouble. So I hope you'll take on that role. If there's something I can do to help you, let me know. Good luck.
Thank you. I don't think that I could be an advocate for SBA if I were not an advocate for small business. I think they are one and the same.
Thank you. I'll yield about my full 24 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. We appreciate it. And Senator Shaheen, we're back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I only have 2 questions, and I know that we may be waiting on 1 or 2 more other people. But as you're aware, the Small Business Administration is a relatively small investment in this economy. If you look at how it compares to many other agencies within the federal government, their budget is not one of the largest. Let's just put it that way. And yet, as we've heard from all the members of this committee, small businesses are very important to this country's economy, to job growth, and we need to do what we can to support them. It's particularly true in rural America, I think. New Hampshire doesn't have very many large cities. We are mostly a rural state, and much of America is also. And when there are cuts to the SBA, that has an inordinate impact on rural America, because one of the places that they can get support as you've heard, is from the SBA for mentoring, for guidance on issues that come up with their businesses, for loans. So it's very significant. And I want to hear from you that you will be an advocate for the budget of the Small Business Administration, because what we saw in the last Republican administration is that they cut SBA's budget by about 32%. So can you reassure me that you will do everything you can to advocate for SBA in the current administration?
Absolutely. I want to make sure that we have the right budget to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And it may be that if I have an opportunity and I'm confirmed that if I'm looking at one aspect of expenditure to say, you know, I think we can best take some of these dollars and move it over here.
Sure.
I think those are the right ways to look at our budget, and then to make sure that we are asking for the right kind of appropriation. But let's lay out our programs. Here is really what we want to accomplish, and here is what it's going to take. When I was a CEO, I often, when it was budget time, we went back to zero-based budgeting. You had to justify your department and your expenditures. And it's funny, that's a pretty sobering experience. And so while I'm not advocating that necessarily at SBA, I do think there is a peeling back of my understanding of the budget and where those dollars are being spent and if they're being spent effectively. My commitment to this committee will be that I will be an advocate to make sure that SBA runs effectively and efficiently.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And effectiveness, obviously, is a goal that we all share. With that in mind, I just wanted to call your attention to what was reported this week, that the new administration is preparing budget cuts based on a blueprint that was published by the Heritage Foundation. You may have seen this. Because the blueprint endorsed cutting funding for several programs that I think are very important to small business. One is the SBIR program, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, and we've heard from a variety of members attesting to the importance of that program. We've seen it in New Hampshire in terms of job creation and providing innovation to the Department of Defense. In fact, at a hearing before the Armed Services Committee, we heard from experts that the most effective existing program to help our military get the innovation they need is the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So I would urge you to look at that very carefully as there are discussions about cutting that program. The other area that the Heritage Foundation blueprint talks about cutting is SBA's role in disaster assistance. And given your interest in that, you've expressed it at the hearing, you expressed it when we discussed it, it's been raised by a number of members. I would have severe reservations about cutting SBA's role in disaster assistance. And just finally, in support for international trade, which again, for so many small businesses, having access to those international markets can make the difference between growing and succeeding and failing, especially when times are tough. So I would just urge you to take a hard look at some of those issues and advocate for what's in the best interests of our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Shaheen. And finally, we're going to turn to Senator Rubio, and Senator Rubio will be the last. And this is a momentous occasion, because I'll tell you, it is not very often you get questioned by every single member of the committee. They've all shown up.
I'm honored today, then.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate it. And Ms. McMahon and I have known each other for a while. I know a lot about her background. Had some opportunity to spend some time with her in our office talking through some of these issues. And in the interest of time, I'll just focus my question on one issue that's of particular importance to the state of Florida. As we had discussed, you know, the Zika virus had an impact on small business, and I know there's been a number of questions asked about disaster relief for communities impacted by storms and other events. But what I think has become a new disaster, something we had never quite seen before, is the impact of a pandemic, or the designation of a community as being a place that people should avoid. This happened during the Zika outbreak this summer in South Florida, where the CDC was basically telling people, do not visit if you're pregnant or certain geographic areas in a community. I don't need to tell you that was not good for business. And while a lot of people think it impacts the big hotels and the big restaurants and the nightclubs, it does, but it impacts all sorts of small businesses down the chain, from, quite frankly, the Uber drivers all the way to the florists at the wedding that got canceled, And so one of the things that we discussed was an effort I made last year that the previous administration was open to opening up or to redefining the use of the disaster loan program to address hardships that small businesses face during public health crisis. So I would just ask, is that something that you would be open to exploring and looking at? I know you need to look at what the cost of that would be, and obviously there needs to be some predictability, although in disaster relief it's hard to predict, right? But I hope that that's something that I can encourage you to be open-minded about, because while I don't think we're going to have many of these, there is nothing to say it couldn't happen again, and our ability to help some of these small businesses who are impacted by the outbreak of a pandemic or what have you, like Zika in the future, is a new dynamic, particularly in communities that are involved in a lot of international travel. So I don't know if you've had a chance to explore that issue a little further, but I hope that you'll be open-minded and work with us on achieving it, because I do think that moving forward that we could unfortunately see that play out in a number of different places in the future.
I have not had a chance to look at it more than our discussion, but certainly I will have an open mind and look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you. And the last point I'd make is I would encourage you at the appropriate time, I'd love to have you come to Florida and visit some of our, I know everybody wants you to get everywhere, right? But Florida's a big
Be there in the winter?
Yes. We would try to schedule it sometime between November and March. But there's some real dynamism in our small business community. And in particular, I've always pointed people to how dynamic first-generation Americans are in terms of entrepreneurship. As I commented to you in our meeting, in some of the key areas like where I live in South Florida and Miami, the people know it as Calle Ocho, it's 8th Street. It's kind of a traditional area where the Cuban exile community is congregated. Of course, there's a Walmart and all the other big chains, but literally 8 out of 10 of the storefronts and businesses are family-owned and operated businesses. And for me, people always say it all the time, that truly is the backbone of our country, I mean, and of our business class. And they don't get the headlines. And a lot of these businesses face challenges. You could have the greatest product in the world, but and these things that we don't think about in terms of challenges to a small business, but one of the things that's happened when they decide to expand the road in that area and go into construction, it's great for the future. But for the next year and a half, customers just think it's a hassle to get in and out, and it's devastating for some of these small businesses. And I think not just the people focus on the loan programs and the other financial assistance that the SBA provides, but to be an advocate for the challenges of small business, whether it's regulations, taxes, or things of this nature. I believe small business in America needs advocates within the federal government who are constantly watchdogs for any public policy at any level of government that has a disproportionate impact on a smaller business. And so I hope that, I know you're going to be very busy getting around everywhere, but at some point, particularly when it's cold and snowing everywhere else, that I can encourage you to come and we'll find the right place, whether it's in Central Florida. We've got small business success everywhere in our state, and we're excited to host you there and would love to interact with you. And again, I thank you for your willingness to serve our country. I really am grateful for the opportunity that we've had to talk, and the nomination process isn't always a pleasant experience, so I'm glad that it sounds like this meeting has gone well, and I look forward to working with you when I anticipate you'll be confirmed here fairly soon. So thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Senator Rubio, Senator Hirano had an equally attractive offer.
The Hawaii, yeah, that's a good one too.
However, I was invited to Alaska, North Dakota, and I said, could we do that in the warm months?
Alaska's great when the salmon are running.
We've got great places everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Rubio. Well, with that, we're going to conclude the hearing. And Mrs. McMahon, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. And Senator Shaheen she had another meeting to go to, and wanted me to express her appreciation for your willingness to serve and for your appearance at this hearing and being as open as you are. This has really been a good hearing. As you can see, we have a very diverse group of senators with different ideas about things, but that's what makes America great. And we are going, Senator Shaheen and I have been talking about trying to move this as quickly as possible. We feel very good about being able to get you confirmed, but obviously it's not over until it's over. And so we're going to try to move this next week. We're booked up this week, but we're going to do our best to try to move it next week. We are going to leave the record open until close of business tomorrow, Wednesday, January 25th, and we'll keep the record open for 2 weeks to edit statements and submit letters and any other relevant materials. So with that, thank you. Thank you to your
Thank you
family
very much.
for being so supportive and being here with us today. With that, our committee is adjourned.
All right, guys, we'll be back. There is more coverage today, so don't forget to click that subscribe button. As soon as we go back in session, or if anything else comes up, make sure that click the bell also next to the subscribe button so you can get the notification of when we go live. We'll be uploading 2 videos today of breaking news, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And like I said, we'll continue streaming. We're going to shut down just for now, and we'll be back in just a little bit.